Right, so I hope everyone can see my screen and you can all still hear me. So just a little bit of an introduction. I'm a final year PhD student and the work I've been doing is in chemistry education. And today I just want to talk a little bit about some of the work I've been doing and hopefully get everyone to think a little bit about how our students think, and especially through the lens of their own confidence. Okay, it works. So some of the things I've been using to underpin this research is that as a challenge that we're always facing when we're instructing our students is engagement. I mean, we're here at an active learning conference, so active learning is generally a good way to maximize engagement. But trying to maintain that can be quite difficult. So thinking about our students and some of the things they may be thinking about as they're on their academic journey is self-efficacy and confidence. So there is literature about how students think about this. And one of the other things is online tools have become much more popular, and their use and how we include them is another question to add into the mix of all the things we have to think about when we're designing the way we teach. So what I did was, after looking at how our courses were designed in chemistry, I surveyed our students to see what they were thinking about in terms of their own confidence. So the best place to start, I thought, was always at the beginning. And so that transition to university and how they think about their own confidence in that first year. So the way we taught we started with obviously coming out from online learning. We had videos, blended learning, in-person workshops, and lecture hours with academics. At King's, we also have graduate teaching assistants, which run workshops in the chemistry department. I am one of them as well. And then final year, when we see more in-person teaching, we saw the return of the traditional lecture, as those who are more comfortable with that went back to teaching that way, but we maintained these kinds of in-person workshops, as well as renaming the lecture hours to skills sessions to hopefully teach our students some valuable skills. So the part of the surveys I asked that I wanted to focus on today are these two questions, which are there in the Padlet. What has affected your confidence the most throughout the module, or any module? And in order to improve your confidence in the topics of this module, what would you like to see more or less of? So ask this question through the three chemistry modules that students completed in that first semester, and to get their responses. So that's kind of what I did, and now it's kind of what I would like you guys to all do. So in the Padlet, those two questions are available, and I'd like everyone to have a think about how would your students in your own context answer these questions, and what you think is important to them in terms of their confidence. So I'll just give everyone a little bit of a few minutes to think about that and fill in the Padlet. Right, so we saw thinking about changes in technology, that form of self-regulated learning, practicing questions, I can see coming up. Okay, so let's see what, go back to PowerPoint. Right, so what do the students in chemistry at King's think? So in that first year, thinking about lecture videos, that idea about asynchronous learning, being able to watch them, having embedded quizzes, really positive. But again, as we saw in responses, that kind of idea about self-regulating your learning, self-motivation, videos being too long, not being able to ask questions immediately, that kind of had a negative effect on their confidence in terms of videos. We had workshops, which was all positive, that kind of synchronous in-person learning where student and instructor are both present or able to having discussions, asking questions, and with instructors and teaching assistants, they can get different explanations than what they've seen in the videos to better help them. And again, that contact time, problem-solving sessions, having that active learning element, and again, clarifying concepts that they couldn't really do in the lecture videos, all seem to be positive to our students. But when it came to their understanding and their confidence in understanding of the chemistry topics we were teaching, there was this negative feeling of too much content, not enough time, and new concepts were more challenging, and they didn't have enough practice answering questions. So again, traditional lectures, the idea of having them recorded, being able to rewatch them, but then lots of information in a traditional lecture just being thrown at them. Skill sessions in person with instructors, again, really positive, as well as the in-person workshops. They can consolidate their learning, they get explanations from GTAs, the teaching assistants, and that in-person synchronous learning is just really helpful for them. And again, blended learning, being able to watch the videos and then have elements of active learning implemented for them are really positive. But once more, we're still seeing this negative aspect about their understanding, like the same feelings about not being able to keep up, not being able to consolidate learning, and not having enough practice questions. So how would they thought to improve their confidence? Lecture videos. Generally shorter videos with quizzes to keep them engaged. And at this point, when you're coming out of a forced remote environment, some thought that replacing it entirely with in-person traditional lectures was what they wanted. And in-person sessions just want more of them. More workshops, longer sessions, more contact time for active learning, problem-solving sessions, question and answers, discussions, but also more questions in general, more questions to practice on in any format they could, especially those past paper questions with model answers. They really wanted those. And then the following year, again, videos, different kinds of preferences, either became more used to getting used to the idea of the different learning environments, more having embedded questions, and also a preference for flipped learning. And again, that idea of more contact time, more synchronous learning, perhaps, negative feelings from being in lockdown, just push them towards preferring in-person learning. And now this box, which I copied and pasted from the previous slide because it's exactly the same themes emerging, the idea of more questions to practice on in any format, and those past paper questions that they really, really want. So what should we do? Again, going back to the Padlet, hope everyone can start thinking about what they would do to improve student confidence. So some of the ideas that we had and will potentially implement in the future is that idea of signposting resources and course materials. So making sure that our students know where all their resources are, and that making it easier to engage and participate. Our study skills sessions. So, I mean, looking back at the previous talk, thinking about zines and different alternate ways to study and including that. So while students want questions, perhaps having question generation sessions so students understand how to generate their own questions, to create their own bank of resources is quite a helpful study skill. Aligning our active learning sessions with our assessment. So in some of our modules, we have two-stage testing. So where there's a collaborative element to their assessment. So ensuring that they have collaborative elements throughout their modules in order to align how they're taught with how they're assessed. And some form of potentially a more difficult route is trying to have some consistency across our modules. New posts in the Padlet, so let's just have a look. Team-based learning, interactive videos, all brilliant ideas, and I believe my supervisor is in the chat, so they will be jotting things down. Practicing skills, one exam-based course. So all, I think, really interesting ideas and definitely ways for us to help students regulate their learning, especially when they're independent, as well as things we can do in the course. And if you would like to contact me to speak further, my email's here on the bottom of the slide. Assessment guidance videos, just saw that pop up. That's really interesting. So I'm going to stop sharing so we can I can answer some questions and we can have more of a discussion. Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope that went smoothly for my first ever Padlet.
Well done, thank you. Any comments or questions? We got a couple of minutes.
I see in the chat there's from Kylie about asking students what they see as the challenges to improving their own confidence with learning to use to start improve or creating interventions. I think that's really interesting. I know a lot of what I've been thinking about has been what putting onus on instructors to do to help students. And I've, again, spoken at other seminars and conferences where I presented my work about how to also help students think about their own confidence. And so as a part of these surveys that I ran, students rated their confidence in the topics that they had in the module. So while as part of my research, that was done at the end of their teaching, perhaps using that as a kind of check throughout their module so they can regulate their own learning is one idea that has come out of that. So students have something that they can check themselves, they can use in their own time to then focus on what they can do to improve with the resources that they have. Students could create quiz questions for others to use, review, example peer-wise. Yes, the example of like question generation is something we thought about. I know that there are some academics in chemistry at King's who are using question generation sessions, and I think it definitely gives students a sense of what academics go through when writing questions and how they can understand that it's not the easiest of processes, but then it gets them that understanding as well as takes some of the workload off of us as instructors.
Thank you. Catherine, just a very quick question.
Yeah, just really quickly going to say about, it was interesting what you're saying about getting students to look back and think of or monitor their own confidence and skills and things, because I think sometimes the toss-up is, are they feeling unconfident because they're just learning new things, and that's an uncomfortable process, and we will have to go through that discomfort of going, oh, there's loads of things I don't know, or is there a real problem happening? I think sometimes that's a real skill, right? It sounds like you're getting to, and it sounds like you're finding ways of doing that, of both of kind of a combination of reassuring them that maybe things are okay and you don't need to be as anxious as you probably are, but for lots of undergraduates, while also being realistic about the skill. So I just really appreciate that. Yeah,
that's why I thought when I started this, I thought confidence was a really good measure to use, because it does invoke these personal feelings of self-reflection, but as well as having these links to attainment and the other things we've seen in literature. So you get the best of both worlds, I imagine.
Yeah.